Hello, everybody, and welcome to A Wild Camper's Diary. My name's Ben, and the aim of this podcast is for me to offer you my thoughts on the world of wild camping, reflections and insight on my own experiences, and hopefully some inspiration along the way. So, welcome to episode 4, which I have entitled What Really Is Leave No Trace. So, bit of background for you. Leave no trace. The clues in the name. It's kind of quite common sense, really. It's the practice of when you go wild camping, of taking everything out that you took in. So there literally is no trace, no evidence that you were there at all. And this has become a kind of the law in inverted commas in the wild camping community amongst what I would describe as proper wild campers. If you watch YouTube and you watch people like me on YouTube, it's something that we do talk about quite a lot, either during our videos or towards the end of our videos. We try to film the spots where we've camped and just to show that actually we're trying to put into practice. We're practicing what we preach, and we try to sort of spread the message, if you like, kind of encourage others to do the same. Kind of examples of what that might look like. I go on a wild camp, and everything that I use. So all of my litter, all of my leftovers, I will put into a bag. I'm very conscious that none of it kind of blows away into the woods or off of the cliff or into a river or anything like that. So I'm just really mindful that all those kind of leftover wrappers and bits of food that I've not used, beer cans, whatever, all go into a bag that is knotted up, and I take that out with me. Also, I'm mindful that I don't leave a physical trace on the environment that I've been there. So if I have had to scrape away the ground a bit, debris, leaves, branches, sticks, whatever it is, then I always make a point of putting that back. Some might say that's a little bit overkill, but if we're trying to leave no trace, then my belief is that that's what it should be. So everything is exactly as you found it when you arrived at the site. If I've had to move a log or some rocks or something like that, then I will put that back exactly where it was. But what do you do if you do all of those things, but you notice other people's rubbish in the environment? So I have had mixed experiences. So I've gone out to do wild camps, and I've gone to places that you would never have guessed anyone was there. They're kind of pristine, and it really compels you to leave it exactly as you have found it. I would say it is rare, in my experience, to find pristine environments. Invariably, other people have left their litter, people are out on day trips, dog walkers, things like that. So, where possible, where it's practical, I do try to pick up litter that I find that isn't my own, and I'll put it in with my own litter and I will take it out. I just feel it's the right thing to do. Some people might not do that, but as I mentioned, it's got to be practical. I remember a time a few years ago when I went off, not on a camp actually, but just a long walk in Sussex, and I went through these woods, and in the middle of these woods was a kind of burnt out car, where the trees and the plants had kind of grown around it, and it was full of beer cans and just rubbish, and it just wasn't practical for me to kind of go into that and scoop it all up, and also I didn't have the means to do it. I didn't have enough bags or sacks or whatever, and it could have been a bit dangerous as well. So I think you do have to exercise a bit of common sense. The thing that really infuriates me is things like poo bags that dog walkers leave out. So in the UK, you are expected to pick up the poo that your dog has created and to take it home with you. But what is quite common, and other people will know what I'm talking about here, is I go out on these walks, I go out on these wild camps, and people will bag up the poo and they'll hang it on a tree next to a footpath, or just leave it in the woods. And in a way, I'd rather they just didn't do that at all. They just kind of left it if they're really not going to take it home at all. So that really annoys me. Since the pandemic has affected us all, I've noticed an increase in masks out in the countryside, in the woods, things that have just been left. I've seen all sorts. I've even seen COVID kits discarded. So I think you have to be careful, obviously, in what you pick up, but it's a shame. So really, what I try to do in my position as a YouTuber, as someone who's sort of in the public eye to a certain extent, people are watching my videos, is to try where I can to promote Leave No Trace, and to just kind of model it, if you like. So, in terms of why Leave No Trace is important, I've been thinking about this evening, and I've kind of pinpointed it down to three things. I think the first thing is just pure common sense. It's respect of the environment, isn't it? I was always brought up as a child that you pick up your rubbish after you and you put it in the bin. And I think if you had that instilled in you, it's just becomes automatic. But for some people out there, it's not, and they just seem to think it's okay to trash the environment. I'm very much a believer of respecting the environment, particularly in the times that we're living in at the moment. Respecting wildlife, and I also see it. And you might think I'm being a bit deep here, but I see it as a kind of a thank you to nature. I feel like nature has provided me with an opportunity to wild camp and to decompress and to have time out and to kind of get away from it all. And I don't feel I have the right to then trash that space. So I think it's really important. It is for me to take everything out that I've taken in, and where I can to take other rubbish that I find. The second reason that I've got is respect for other users of the countryside, so that they can enjoy it. So that when they rock up and they go into the woods, and they don't have to be wild campers, they might just be people who love the outdoors, people who like to walk, with a dog, without a dog, to cycle, that they go into an environment and they get to find what I would expect to find. And then the third reason I've got is about the reputation for wild campers. It drives me mad when you find tents, yes, tents and stoves and saucepans, stuff like that in the woods, where people have just camped and just left it all, burnt out ground, and the remnants of fires, and it's stupid. And the problem is that it does give the wild camping community a bit of a bad name, and we noticed an increase in it kind of during the lockdown, and when people couldn't go abroad, and it forced more people out into the countryside here in the UK. And there were parts of the UK where wild camping is either legal or tolerated, and even those places had to kind of limit what wild campers could do, and had to restrict it. So it is a shame when people do that. So it is a bit of an ongoing battle, but it is about reputation for the wild camping community, and also, and this kind of links to what I was saying about the legalities of wild camping. I'll address this in a separate podcast, but it's not straightforward. The legalities of wild camping in the UK, in the different UK nations. The majority of England, it's not actually legal to wild camp. It's actually a civil offence, and so you do have to be careful. You have to use common sense, and you have to be stealthy. So if you don't want to be found wild camping, then why would you leave any trace that you've been there? So some people described it as stealth camping, or some people might say it's for wild camping. But whatever you call it and whatever you do, I believe that you should absolutely, leave no trace that you were there. So there we go. That's what Leave No Trace is. That's a bit about how I practice it, what I think about it, and why I think everyone else should do so too. Thank you very much for listening to this podcast. Just a little request before I go. If you're listening to the podcast today on Apple Podcasts, please do, if you have a moment, leave me a review, leave me a little rating on the stars there. It really does help with the growth of this podcast. So until the next time, take care, leave no trace, and I'll see you again for episode 5 of A Wild Camper's Diary.